House to the motion that this House will change the form of presidential to parliamentary. The motion that this House will change the form of the Philippine government from presidential to parliamentary. We will call on the Prime Minister of the government. The Speaker has 7 minutes to speak. He will be time the moment.
In Philippine settings nowadays, presidential system will we vote for our leaders through national election, but even if we generally elect leaders, still problems arises in status quo, i.e. groups or people not genuinely represented by other individuals. This is the reason that we need to consider that there are groups who are marginalized and unrepresented in the government. This is why, in the very first place, we have to change the kind of government to the parliamentary system. Even if we have party systems that exist in status quo, we believe coming from your government that it is not enough for us to have this kind of representation. Firstly, we have to understand that something is more better, Mr. Speaker, to represent people in order for the society to have more better progress, and that will be explained later. Example for this kind of unreserved grammar, say for example, the Ilugaos, the Lumas, the Bangsamoro, and the other ethnic groups in the society that needs a representation in the national level, Mr. Speaker, so that we have to understand why these kind of people are still important in the society in making such decisions in the very first place. Because in status quo, all projects, programs, decisions, laws need to go a lot of processes. It creates delays in catering our people and society. This is how we picture presidential system in the very first place. And as a developing country, we need a system that will give us a head start to further progress. This is the word coming from your government. Number one, how to achieve better regional representation. Secondly, democracy will be better upheld. And thirdly, generate or decline of the idea of transparency. With that kind of idea, Mr. Speaker, this is how we're going to go up to further discuss or elaborate facts in status quo. Let's take a look government who follow parliamentary rules. Well, we can name United Kingdom, Japan, France, European states, Taiwan, for example. These countries, the system of their government follow parliamentary rules. If we look this, their proactive making of laws, they can easily formulate and implement laws because this idea takes us to the idea that they can have more development unlike the presidential one. For the reason that government and presidential can delay the implementation of laws for longer span of time. Unlike the parliamentary system, Mr. Speaker, where people, officials, and representatives are given the chance to be heard and given the chance to implement laws at the very first place. They might say, coming from our opposition, that well, it's better to have presidential system because people can choose their head of state. But we say to some point, people can choose wrong leaders at the end of the day. For the reason that majority choose a leader because of media biases and other stuff that people just have this kind of sympathy in the very first place. What's good about parliamentary is we have the chance to scrutinize our leaders by the basis of his achievements and the idea that in parliamentary system, refined elite individuals choose the Prime Minister as the head of state for the betterment of the country. This is how we're going to discuss the idea of transparency. But we will first answer the question, where do we best uphold the objectivity of leaders? We should remember that in presidential system, the term of office of the head of state is fixed for 6 years. Not unless there will be an impeachment that will be filed. But even there is an impeachment, still it takes too long to oust a leader in his position. But it gives us more complex of trying to impeach a president who becomes irresponsible in his duty. In presidential the propensity of abuse to power is higher. For the reason of a place of term of office, there was given to him as an authority to abuse this kind of immunities and privileges that he has. Take for example, the laws that are necessary for people that should be implemented to be better by the President for his own personal biases and opinion. Even if it's necessary in any to some people, this is something that delays other projects, Mr. Speaker, at the very first place. However, in Parliament system, the Prime Minister is pressured to do well his duty. For the members of the Assembly have this no vote of confidence, then automatically, if the Prime Minister will have this kind of majority of votes, automatically he can be replaced by a much better Prime Minister in the very first place. This is more better coming from us in our idea. Prime Minister is pressured to do well his duty, as I have already told you on the kind of idea that he wants to push in this way. That is why his propensity of abuse will be taken against him. If we will do such anomalous example in other cases, will be against the kind of duty that he has in the very first place. The pressure of other representatives from the other region, which these representatives are elected by people, becomes a positive value to the Prime Minister to impress his constituents and to perform the task that was given to him. With this reason, we can say that because of uncertainty, it becomes the deterrence of the Prime Minister to do his duty. And this is mutually exclusive of benefit coming from your government that we could provide on you. Second question, in what system productivity is at best? If we have to compare the two systems, in the issue of productivity, I will say that we can both be productive. But let's dissect which system we will be able to see tangible effects of productivity. Productivity remains about the fast implementation of necessary projects, funds, for example, laws, programs, and alike that are beneficial in general. In presidential system, productivity becomes slow, but we cannot easily handle urgent needs in the society. Unlike the parliamentary, where there is a fusion of power, productivity becomes more achievable in as fast as we can, because we decide implementation in just an assembly. Unlike presidential system, that it needs to undergo first the lower house, to the Senate, and to the President, and if it neglects and it will be neglected by the President and vetted, then it will come again as another resolution, and it will have to change and another kind of thing, that it will go back again to the lower house at the end of the day. If we picture this scenario, it is really hard for us to produce quality of time to solve issues in this very debate. In conclusion, what I told you on which system is characterized by visibility or accessibility of information and being tangible. That in parliamentary system, number one, the uncertainty of term of office of Prime Minister becomes a deterrent to fulfill his duty. And secondly, the fast solution and concern to the society becomes more productive in the system of parliamentary. And with all of these reasons, thanks.
The Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and then to take the Prime 8 seconds to take the Prime Minister of the government. Now we call on the media of the
Basically, the idea that I got coming from your Prime Minister is that the parliamentary system is so perfect that it actually makes sense decision-making in the government, and that it actually is the reason why Japan or United Kingdom, for example, are very productive and well-developed at the end of the day. But I guess, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, that is not always the case. Why do you think, or what do you think is the reason why different countries in this world actually have different kinds of political systems? It is because different countries have different needs, and different countries need a different kind of system that will fit those kind of needs. Talking, for example, United Kingdom and Japan, we all know that it's not like Philippines, which is a third world country. When we talk about the parliamentary system, ladies and gentlemen, it's composed of elites. And that is the very reason why it is very harmful for the Philippines. Because talking about or what have you, Mr. Chair, all that they do is actually to make themselves or to show nice to the politicians that we have for them to enjoy the kind of favors that they can ask at the end of the day. So how do we expect a kind of parliamentary system in the government to rule the Philippines more effectively than the ones that we already have today? So first, things that I'm going to talk about in my speech are on the presidential system as a representation of the people and the beauty of its decision-making process. Also, that it provides an open avenue for everyone to participate, not just in decision-making, but also in political candidacies. And also, that it provides better transparency than the parliamentary system that they have discussed a while ago. So first, that the presidential system is the representation of the people. They said that the government is for the people and by the people, Mr. Chair. The government leaders serve as the representation of the people who will cater their needs as subordinates of the state. This is the very reason why we elect people whom we think will be able to hear us and represent us in the Philippine government. This is where the beauty of a presidential system comes in. People elect political candidates, and in fact, the seats in the government are filled with different and diverse leaders who come from different ethnicities and who bear different and diverse political testimonies at the end of the day. How is this beautiful? This is beautiful because we all know that we are composed of different groups of people. We have the rich, we have the poor, we have the average, we have the elites, we have the businessmen, and what have you, Mr. Chair. And so I say that this kind of country, composed of these kinds of people, need a certain system that will really represent them. Yes, we will see to a certain extent, and according to what they said, that this presidential system that we have right now does not genuinely represent the people. Yes, we extend to a certain extent, but not totally, Mr. Chair. Because how can you say that? Are you saying that because you don't see, for example, a Manobo being a senator of the Philippines? You don't see, for example, a Igor being the president of the Philippines? That is not the kind of representation that we are talking about. We are talking about the kind of representation that even if you are not a Manobo, then still, the government is catering your needs because these political leaders see you as a part of the state. Even though they are not Manobos, but if they come from other ethnicities, or if they come from a poor family, which is their child, then still they can represent you as a leader in the government, they can represent you as a subordinate of the state at the end of the day. Now, with regards to the decision-making process, they said that the parliamentary system offers a faster decision-making process, Mr. Chair. What do you think is the reason? The reason is because this parliamentary system is composed of a uniform type of people. They are the rich, they are the elites, or they are those who have high positions, or they are those who have a say in the society, right? They come from a single party list. And that is the very reason why when a certain and that is the very reason why when the Prime Minister, when the cabinet members propose something or say something, then automatically, if this will be disapproved, then automatically it will be, if this is not disapproved, automatically it will be approved faster or disapproved faster because they are uniform. Because if one will actually go against the wants or what the majority wants, then for sure that we will be a candidate or subject to this subject injection from the cabinet at the end of the day. If you are the Prime Minister, then you don't actually approve the what your cabinet members want, then possibly you will be abjected as the Prime Minister and be replaced at the end of the day. That is what's awful about a parliamentary system. If you actually impose that here in the Philippines, then it's only the rich who will benefit, not the majority, which is the poor and the average, Mr. Chair and ladies and gentlemen. So now, how can we say that the presidential system actually opens an avenue for everyone to participate? This is the very reason why we let people write. Even if we say that why are there no Manobos or why are there no Maranaos or Igorots in the Senate, the very reason is that they don't run, but they have the chance to run. When I say no, because you know what, in the decision-making process, in every deal that they do, actually in a presidential system, we know that we can know these things, right? The media is very active, right? And if something goes wrong, then the people actually blame the political leaders. They actually blame the president. And that is the very reason why these people is actually challenged to be more transparent at the end of the day, rather than a parliamentary system where they can just keep something in secret without the people knowing. So with all these things, we're proud to challenge the motion. Thanks.
The Leader of the Opposition spoke for 7 minutes and 29 seconds. Now we call on the Deputy Prime Minister of the Government.
Assalamualaikum and good evening. In our government side, opposition side, I have 2 arguments to present. First is the implementation of the change of the government from presidential to parliamentary how it will give us a better leader for our government, and then how it will unify the executive and legislative body of our government. First is, it will give us a better leader for our government, because as we all know, the people we will be voting for the member of the parliament, and the members will be voting for the prime minister. I want to say is that we, the constituents of the Philippines, will be voting for the members of this parliament, and this parliament will vote for the prime minister, which means that these members already knows about each other, and they know more about the right prime minister for our country. So with that, we can be assured that there will be a better prime minister, there will be a better president for our country. It is already in the status quo that most people are not knowledgeable enough in terms of the candidates running for president or running for senators. So we need the implementation of parliament to secure that the only prime minister that will be sitting in that position is the most deserving one, most sincere one, and most capable one. So in voting for the members of the parliament, we can be assured that the prime minister that will be sitting is the most enough and the most is someone that is most capable for the betterment of our country. Noting down. Next is how the implementation of the presidential to parliament will unify the executive and legislative body. We know that in passing law, a very long process is being undertaken, because it starting from the Congress to the senators, it will be rejected. It will just be rejected by the president because of the veto power. Then when the parliament will be implemented, the veto power will be begun, and there will be a shorter length of passing the laws. The bills will be more needed. Bills will be more needed. Needed bills will be more passed, and will be created into a law. So that is good for our country, because that alone creates a more the long process of law is one significant problem in our government. Then we need to change, because if status quo, the government are not doing their job properly. Already we can see around us that some of the congressmen, some of the representatives are not doing their job properly, thus leading the change to parliamentary. Because in parliamentary, every region will have their own candidates, and in the parliament, and these candidates are more sympathetic towards their region. They know more about what's the real events in the region, thus creating a more clear decisions, more unbiased decisions for the betterment of that region, and thus creating a more better nation. Thus, I because we only have two political parties in Japan, right? There are obviously disincentivizing the other sectors who wants to portray their political ideas and grievances, for example, members of these House. What does that mean? You only allow limited ideas to exist. You only limit for people to participate, for example, in decision making, Madam Speaker, and members of these House. We don't want that, Madam Speaker, to happen because it's really unfair for the other sectors who wants to participate and who wants, Madam Speaker, to be highlighted what kind of grievances and ideas that they want to forward, for example, members of this House. Well, if the problem is, if they talked about that, you know what, it is the cabinet that chooses the prime ministers, and that is why it is better for the people. Remember that, Madam Speaker, and members of this House. The very fact that we trust the during elections, Madam Speaker, and members of this House, we have the prerogative to choose what president what you want, for example, and members of this House. In that kind of situation, Madam Speaker, and members of this House, you are free to vote. You are free to choose what you want, for example, to become a president, to become a president in your country, for example, and members of this House. In a situation of parliamentary, Madam Speaker, is that the cabinet system is the cabinet only chooses the prime minister and not the people, Madam Speaker, and members of this House. That it exactly undermines the quality of democracy there, Madam Speaker, and members of this House. Because obviously, it doesn't mean, Madam Speaker, it doesn't mean, it is as if that if you are parliament, you will not choose a wrong leader, for example, and members of this House. Remember that what we only change, we only want, Madam Speaker, is to change the system of government, but not a feeling of individual to choose a better leader, for example, and members of this House. In a democratic system, for example, like Philippines, people already aware what is happening during election, right? We already have awareness by the use of media, for example, and members of this National Assembly. Exactly why they cannot argue to us that people are not aware of this, that people are not good when it comes to choosing their leaders, for example, and members of this National Assembly. Especially, Madam Speaker, that the government is always reminding them that you have to choose and you have to vote wisely, Madam Speaker, and members of this House. First, I'm going to discuss to you why is it, how diversity is important to have a more effective state, Madam Speaker, and members of this House. Because obviously, Philippines is a pluralistic, right? That we celebrate presidential because of diversity. Pluralists recognize, or the Philippines recognize the existence of the divisions of the society along the lines of class, ethnicity, age, gender, and religion. Exactly why, Madam Speaker, during the administration of Pinoy Aquino gives economy to Tom Zamora just because we give them the chances, Madam Speaker, to self-determine themselves, for example, and members of these House. That is the good in unitary because the administration, the kind of administration that we have is not selfish and open-minded to somehow hear what the grievances of Bangsamoro wanted, for example, and members of these House. They do not regard any single group or divisions as sufficiently powerful to dominate a wide range of interests, which does not allow for any situation in which our dominates all others, for example, and members of these House. In unitary, Madam Speaker, you can see party-list system, right? For instance, Madam Speaker, the sectors who don't have representatives in the Congress, Madam Speaker, they always have the party-list, Madam Speaker, to represent them. In parliamentary system, Madam Speaker, is that you cannot see party-list. You cannot see party-list system there, right? Because you only have these leaders. Because the kind of system that parliamentary has are cohesive, that it can also be subjective to manipulation, for example, and members of these House. For instance, Madam Speaker, once you are against the kind of bill that we have, Madam Speaker, the people in parliamentary will always use threat, will always use coercion, for example, and members of these House, We think that for the state parts, for example, and members of these House, given the diversity of the interest in society, the state obviously, we could see it as an able term like the interest of its member. that various decisions and groups in society convey their political ideas and grievances to the state by the way of political parties and interest groups, for example, and members of this noble assembly. We think that the value of diversity is important in diverse society because we will be able to point out to you the differences. With these differences, we're able to formulate solutions that eventually help the best address the problem in the status quo, for example, and members of this house. Same goes with the system of the government that we need diversity in our state, especially in our officials to best address the problems that our society is facing, for example, and members of this house. With diverse system of the government, every party, every concerned sectors will have the chance to lobby their grievances. What is really important? Why is it really important to give them the right to lobby? Because every organization, private associations have chances to influence public policy, right? Farmers, cooperatives, and etc. Madam Speaker, and members of this noble assembly. These diverse grievances will eventually make the legislature exhaustively discuss as to how they can address it. And with that, Madam Speaker, we are really proud to oppose.
We thank the Speaker previously, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, spoke for 7 minutes and 60 seconds. Again, we reiterate to encourage all each debaters to please.
Ladies and gentlemen, because of the diverse nature of the Philippines, we need to have a state that consists of intelligent and diverse officials. This is the idea of diverse society that what Deputy Leader of the Opposition told you. The idea of diversity on government side is the one genuine representation. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that genuine representation on government is already diluted the moment you only have a single party to rule the country, Mr. Speaker. We believe the diversity would exist, especially that you only won't exist, especially that you only have a homogeneous body that would go to rule the Philippines. The idea of diversity is a value we upheld in opposition. In terms of decision-making, Mr. Speaker, opposing parties exist on our legislature, which makes the legislative body to become more critical in what bills to pass. Even if, Mr. Speaker, that this will going to prolong implementation of laws, we believe, Mr. Speaker, but at least we can be assured that the laws that will be implemented will be for the great benefit of the society, Mr. Speaker. Because proper regulation is there, especially that public discussion is there, which make the state better, which make our state better, Mr. Speaker. There would be a biases in implementing laws on government, especially if Parliament would tend to implement laws that would bend on their side to highlight that their party is better and to assure that they would win again in the next election. This is unfair, Mr. Speaker, especially that those individuals who doesn't support Prime Minister would not get the privileges, Mr. Speaker, especially that the laws implemented by Parliament would only be on the benefit, Mr. Speaker, and members of his most noble assembly. This is what Prime Minister told us, that you know what, in presidency on our side, people would be the one who are going to elect a leader. But unfortunately, people tend to choose a wrong leader, Mr. Speaker. But we question, is it as if this problem exists only on our side? It is as if the moment we are going to have parliamentary form of government, then people would not choose a wrong leader, Mr. Speaker. Remember, what we only change is the system of government. We don't change the current of mentality that we have in society, Mr. Speaker. Meaning, there is no assurance also on our side that we will choose a right leader, Mr. Speaker. It was gradually told us, you know what, that on their side, our leader would be more faster, Mr. Speaker. We believe that the leader of the state should be perfect, as he can be, Mr. Speaker. But still, we are people and we are bound to do mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. The beauty of all is that the moment the president would do mistake, we give him a second chance, Mr. Speaker, to correct the mistake he had and prove himself more towards society, Mr. Speaker. On government side, once the PM commit a mistake, then he would be ousted faster, which sends a notion that every time Prime Minister commit a crime, commit mistakes, Mr. Speaker, he will be ousted and the cycle goes on and on, which forward unstable form of government, ladies and gentlemen, and members of his most noble assembly. Before the issues, yes.
We believe in second chances, but we don't think that Such a chance should be given if the development of the country is at stake.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can assure that the government would be there, especially you have 6 years to prove yourself, Mr. Speaker, and to prove yourself, Mr. Speaker, that even if you commit mistake for your first year, you still have 5 years to actually condemn the mistake and prove yourself that you are a better president of the state, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go with the first issue, with the issue of maximum participation. We know, Speaker, that the president is elected by people. This makes the president's power more legitimate that's the leader of the, compared to the leader appointed indirectly by the people. People tend to decline in participating in government programs because they don't like the Prime Minister, especially Prime Minister is just nominated in the Parliament, Mr. Speaker. With presidency, maximum participation of the society will be more achieved, especially that the majority of the people voted for him. This is where we can, Mr. Speaker, that we can best develop because of the idea that society is willing to support the government because they are the ones who elect the president and they are the ones who are going to support him, Mr. Speaker, and members of his most noble assembly. So the notion is that maximum participation is best achieved on opposition compared to your government, Mr. Speaker. Let's go to the second issue. Is the issue, Mr. Speaker, going to be responsive towards Deputy Prime Minister? We believe, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the separation of powers. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that the presidency and with our policy, the presidency and legislatures are two parallel structures. This arrangement allows each structure, Mr. Speaker, to supervise one another and preventing abuse, ladies and gentlemen. Proper evaluation is there, check and balances, transparency, less propensity of abuse of power would be the mistake, especially each branch will become watchdog of one another, meaning executive power, Mr. Speaker, will be evaluated by legislature, and legislature will eventually going to be evaluated by president or the executive power. Mr. Speaker, we believe that the separation of power between individuals and any unit society is more advantageous, especially in the context of Philippines, Mr. Speaker, because one party will going to evaluate mistakes from other countries, Mr. Speaker, and some watchdog, so that there will be an deterrence for an individual, for example, or an executive power to abuse their power, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, your point.
Firstly, allow me to suppose matter about parliamentary. We are accused that all representatives are from the same party. After all, parliamentary has affirmative party opposition. Where do you get your matter? Second, we want fast action of the government by implementing program for the society or not.
Unfortunately, Kevin, in parliamentary, you have only a homogeneous body right, and a one party who are going to rule you, Mr. Speaker. But even if, Mr. Speaker, we believe that in terms of the last issue, in the issue of stability, ladies and gentlemen, with the president, by a virtue of fixed term, we provide, Mr. Speaker, more stability than a Prime Minister who can be dismissed at any time. Especially already proved to you that parliamentary will make an unstable state. Then the more development will be stagnant, Mr. Speaker. What we need is to have a stable state to forward the society in a brighter future, ladies and gentlemen. This can only be achieved on your opposition side. Eventually, Mr. Speaker, stability is there, especially to have fixed term for government to implement laws and eventually projects so they can be beneficial towards society. On opposite, Mr. Speaker, there is no stability, especially that any time Prime Minister will be ousted, Mr. Speaker, and members of his most noble assembly. With the issues of maximum participation, with the separation of powers and stability for government, for a better state, Mr. Speaker, and to address more problems in society, we believe, Mr. Speaker, that the motion should fall. Thanks.
Thank the opposition whip. Now we call on the reply speech of the government. On the opposition, I'm sorry. You have 4 minutes for the reply speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, basically, if I'm going to judge this debate, I would actually assess this debate in 3 levels. First is at the level of contribution. Well, basically, your government just told us that parliamentary is beautiful because Japan is wonderful. And I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, that is always the case, right? Because according to what opposition told you, that different countries actually need different kinds of political political systems because they have different needs, because they have different people at the end of the day. So just because Japan and the United Kingdom is as wonderful as we can see them nowadays, it doesn't mean that Philippines can automatically be like them when we actually apply or implement a parliamentary type of government at the end of the day. Now, secondly, he also tackled about the issue of transparency. According to the issue of transparency, I actually did not get their point because they just said that it's more transparent because the decisions being made is actually faster, that the decision made is actually did not get their point. But as to transparency, I think I will give this issue the win to the opposition side. It's all because as to the issue of transparency, there is bigger transparency in the presidential type of system because the people is aware of what's happening on the ground. Because we have the media to inform them, and because everything that their government does is actually visible to the people. Not just because of the media, but because every decision or step that they do is being very well scrutinized to the point that it takes long to process these kind of moves or steps that they're going to do at the end of the day, which their government actually found problematic. They just said that the fast decision making is better than the long one, period. But they never actually saw the beauty. You have to see the beauty of why, even though sometimes these judicial processes take long, still they are beautiful at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, how can I say that they are beautiful? It's because this is a clear manifestation of a good representation in the government with a presidential type of system. It's all because people are very participative. It's in public discussions, and it's all because these kind of decisions that are being processed are also being scrutinized by the senators or by the lower house and by the upper house at the end of the day. They say that it's problematic because it's actually being done, that you're actually involving these two levels of the house in order to pursue a certain decision or not. But we say coming from your opposition side, it's actually the beauty of this presidential system. Because even though it takes long, people are aware, these things are not kept secret to the people, and that people also have their own means of participating in these kind of discussions at the end of the day. Now let's, as to the level of responsiveness, I think that I would still give this to the opposition side. Why is this so? Because basically, the issues being presented by your opposition side perfectly coincide with the issues being presented by the government side. But there are issues that they have neglected to answer, that they have neglected to engage in coming from the opposition side. One example again is as to the issue of decision making, which they say is not beneficial, when in fact they're not even giving us a clear reason how is this so. And according to role fulfillment, basically the role of your deputy speakers is to extend the level of analysis that your first speakers actually have. And with this role fulfillment, I still give this to the opposition side. So in all this, I think opposition will win this debate.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Thank you, opposition. Now we call on the reply speech of the government.
This may be the reason why government will fly in this debate and will take automatically the crown in this competition. Firstly, at the level of consistency, we believe that government is more consistent and persuading you and telling you what is the beauty of parliamentary. Well, coming from your government, coming from your opposition, they give us the idea that they have to stick to presidential, even if the idea of late or delayed functions will be there. But at the same time, they even told us that they want also to consider fast projects at the end of it. So what are they going to implement in the very first place on their side? Manner. Secondly, at the level of responsibility, in this idea, Mr. Speaker,
I will give the credit coming to your government on the idea of how are we going, on the idea of being responsive to the arguments that was being told to you by the government. It was not being caused by the opposition. And somehow, they even just repeat those ideas that they think is more important to their side. But nonetheless, they never even give us the idea of how parliamentary, as the idea of the Prime Minister as this kind of uncertain time that makes this Prime Minister will become a person who will do his duty at the very first place. In the terms of these dynamics, we believe that government also has it over your opposition. And the idea of work fulfillment, we believe that your Prime Minister in this debate had told you about what's the beauty of parliamentary over presidential, and your DPS told us was the beauty of the representation in the very first place. And lastly, how your government will crystallize and make us understand what the parliamentary best to shoot for over than presidential. On the issue of the nuancing between parliamentary and presidential, the idea that national elections should not be a system because our state, as developing state, it has this reason that people are not easily or not rational enough to choose their leaders at the end of the day. Somewhere parliamentary, when you have this kind of idea, where we choose the best of different regions, Mr. Speaker, to represent our national government, we tend to make this more compatible, and we take even the idea of giving us more quality of implementation of programs at the end of the day. The reason why Parliament will fly also in this debate, because in a developing state, we need laws and projects that needs to be answered, Mr. Speaker, and we don't need delay at the end of the day. Something that they will never understand what is the value of being a developing state. And with all of these reasons, I believe government will. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, we thank both teams and we request the speakers to please cross the house.